So, BioWare, ya done goofed.
Yeah, that's for sure.
Now to give some intro to this, Anthem launched back in February. It's a game?
Maybe?
I don't know if it gets that title. I feel like it's almost a demo for a fun thing, but it's not fun.
Yeah, I could see that. Some people calling it a demo to a game that they're gonna fix over time.
EA and BioWare though, and just all of EA's studios.
Right now, yeah.
This is an issue because they really screwed this one up, and it wasn't even EA who screwed it up, it was BioWare. And the issue with that is BioWare has been known for so many great things, and then this.
Well, wasn't their last game before it? I'm trying to remember. Was it Andromeda?
Mass Effect Andromeda was the last one, but people gave that one a pass because it was BioWare Montreal.
Yeah, fair enough.
BioWare Edmonton and Austin really didn't touch it, so people are willing to give them a pass.
Well, Edmonton's been working on Knights of the Old Republic for a while, trying to make that a proper game.
Don't you mean Austin?
Was that Austin? Did I say
Austin.
Edmonton?
Yeah, you did.
Okay.
It's whatever.
Yeah.
But yeah, Austin was working on that. And so we kind of wanted to figure out what happened with Anthem. Everyone did.
Yeah.
And someone did. Someone amazing did. And man, we're here to talk about that. So, thank you to Jason Schreier of Kotaku. And yes, Kotaku.
Kotaku's a company that
They're a
lives
company.
lives for clickbait.
But, Jason did good work on this one. He secured a lot of interviews with BioWare employees and a lot of actual facts out of this.
Instead of just trying to skip around it and be like, oh, that's what's happening, it was half-assed.
Yeah, no, this was a detailed thing. I copy-pasted the article just to see how many words there were in, like, a Google Doc, and it was up at, like, the 12,000 mark.
Yeah.
And a lot of those words weren't properly spaced either when I copy-pasted them because of hyphens and stuff.
Yeah,
so,
they weren't counted properly.
There was at least 12,000. And it came up to like 30-some pages or something like that. Like
36 pages, I think, because I also did the same thing, and I think it went up to 36 pages.
So it was a beefy article.
Didn't they?
It took me like an hour to read through.
And then the next day went into the fact that there was a thing from the manager or CEO.
Yeah, it was like the top of BioWare.
BioWare Edmonton.
Yeah.
Just saying things.
Trying to PR their way out of it.
Yep.
And before we go any further into that, we should talk about what actually happened. Because without that, this context is lost. So, where do we start? I think we should start with the contract and how this actually may not be EA's fault.
Yeah. It was a 7-year contract, and they had 7 years to make this game.
EA approaches you, 2012, and you have an idea for a game. And they're willing to give you a 7-year contract on this game. And within 7 years, they expect a game. A finished product they can put on shelves and sell
to everyone.
Yeah, make a profit off of. They're a company, a scummy one. They've won the Worst Company in America award many times. But at the end of the day, they are a company. That's what they do.
Yep.
7 years. 5 to 6 spent in pre-production.
Planning.
I don't know what to say to that.
I don't know either. It's insane. Like, most games will only be in production for like a year to 2 years, maybe.
That
pre-production.
That planning phase should not take you more than a year or two, because that's concept art, and that's like, this is kind of what we think it is. If you're in that for 5 years out of a 7-year contract, nobody knew what was going on.
Yep.
And nobody did. Nobody at BioWare knew what they were doing. So, like, how do you think EA reacted as a company at, like, year 3 if they went to go see what progress they had, and it was like, oh, we made some nice drawings? Like,
yeah.
I would be losing my mind. It's crazy just to think that they spent that long in this phase.
Yeah, that's fair. You kind of have to wonder, what were they actually doing? Were they actually planning, or were they just, like, scrapping and redoing a bunch of times, I wonder?
I would probably bet it was a lot of scrapping.
Yeah.
Because remember, it talks about in the article, they didn't know what they wanted their own game to be originally. They just knew they didn't want it to be like anything that was on the market.
Yep.
Which brings us to another thing. The D word.
You are not allowed to say Destiny.
Or Division.
Or Division, yep. Those two, because it's like they're the same game, just in different time periods.
It was like, we're not those games, so we won't compare ourselves to those games. The issue with that comes when you are those games, and you don't
How do you compare?
You don't talk about those games. How do you learn?
Yep. From people's mistakes.
Destiny made so many mistakes with not only Destiny 1, but Destiny 2.
Yeah.
And there was so much room to learn. And same with Division. They had a lot of mistakes too. And yet they learned from none of them because they didn't compare.
Yeah.
It blows my mind that they wouldn't.
There was also the big mechanic of Anthem when it finally came out, which was flying. A guy that doesn't even play games came in and said, you should put flying in the game. It'd be more fun.
Yeah.
When someone who's legitimately not even a game person is coming in and saying, like, yeah, this isn't fun.
When you have a suit, a 60-year-old suit, who goes on to manage, like, a football team or soccer in England, so that's his passion. When you have that guy come to your studio, play your game, and he's not at all into games, and he's like, this isn't fun, there's an issue here. And to be fair, they had flying in the game before. And then they took it out.
Yeah.
Which made no sense. And then he told them put it back in. And they did. And it was way better again.
Yep.
Because you feel like Iron Man.
It does feel, I gotta play it. It's flying's definitely the best part because the shooting is like clunky. Is the way I put it. It doesn't feel smooth.
It feels like a lot of third persons where because you can't tell exactly where you're aiming, it's just kind of like a crosshair.
Yeah.
It never feels great. It just kind of feels okay.
You gotta just kind of hope for the best.
Your crosshair is precise in where you're gonna hit, but it just doesn't feel the same when you're not actually seeing it.
It feels like guns that should be light feel heavy. I didn't get to try any of the heavy guns, but it's still like something doesn't feel right with it.
And then, because they didn't want to compare themselves to anything, and because they thought they were so unique, they didn't spend time making unique stuff.
Yep.
A great example, comparing it back to the others in the genre. I know this, I haven't played enough Division 2 to really get a feel for it, but I know there are a good amount of models in that game for weapons.
Yeah.
Destiny has always been very good with making cool looking stuff.
Even if they remake them, some will be like, the great examples are I think it was the last raid, which is a giant 9-man who haven't played Destiny or played MMOs. They reused guns for the final raid in Destiny 1. And they still looked really, really good.
Exactly. And it's like, they've always had this thing of, you can tell just by the look of the gun, this is special.
Yeah.
That this is cool and I want this. In Anthem, they all look the same.
Every scout rifle, every auto rifle just looks the same, just different coloring.
And
really.
Stats, basically. That's
Stats are minimal from what I saw.
Oh, and that gets me on to the next bit. They didn't get to playtest.
Yeah, they didn't.
Because the way that their percentages worked for rolls on weapons was broken.
Yeah.
Because there were some great examples where someone would get like this masterwork weapon that's supposed to have this cool ability, and the ability it has is broken. Like, and not in a good way. There was one that, it was a flamethrower that did 0% fire damage for 0 seconds.
Yep.
Or the other one, which is when you, upon melee killing an enemy, they will receive 20% armor back.
That was a thing?
Yeah, that's a
Jeez.
thing. How do you let these get through?
Yep.
You don't play test.
Yep. And then there was the big E3 of 2017. Here's BioWare's new game, Anthem. Developers, that's our game's title? I didn't know that.
Oh yeah, so there's two huge things with that. One, the night before E3, the biggest conference at the time, they decide this game is no longer Beyond anymore. It's Anthem, which nobody knows what that means. It just sounds cooler because Beyond sounds really vague. Okay, I can kind of get behind that. But when the developers of the game learn what game they're supposed to be making, when the rest of the world finds out what game they're supposed to be making, there's an issue there.
Also, that one wasn't that good. Oh my gosh, I got this gun. I don't know what that is.
Yeah, it was a lot of them talking.
Just being amazed at what's around them. Oh my gosh, look at this scenery. Oh, there's a monster we can't fight.
Or the Strider that's walking around that you never actually see those in the game walking around.
Oh, yeah.
That's a big one. There was all this stuff that just never made it into the full game. And this is where EA's fault comes in. They did force them, because they have a company-wide mandate with all their studios right now, that all development starts on Frostbite engine.
Yeah.
The Frostbite engine was not made for these kind of games. It was made for Battlefield.
Yeah, pretty much.
DICE made the engine, and it's a good engine for what DICE does. DICE makes Battlefield and Mirror's Edge, basically. Two first-person games that look pretty and run smooth.
Yeah.
They are not third-person.
They're first.
They're first-person. They don't have an inventory system.
Yep.
And, like, there's so many other things that that weren't baked into Frostbite that they needed. So most of the time for the developers was spent trying to, like, Frankenstein these features into the game.
And try and not make the game a buggy mess.
Because EA had the Frostbite engineer team working on FIFA.
Oh, yeah.
Because FIFA makes them a truckload of cash.
Because it's easy to market because it's a yearly release.
It's a yearly release. They have the microtransactions baked in with the card system that nobody likes. I'll get to that later. They have it's basically just what you get in every yearly release is the new roster, basically.
Pretty much, whoever's new, who left will be gone. New players will be coming in. Maybe if someone's popular, they'll become a legendary card.
And like, that's about it. They had the Frostbite engineers working on this to have like textures and stuff look better, and just like the way people trip up and stuff to make it look like photorealistic, which I understand, but that shouldn't be your major priority when it comes to this, because that's getting rid of a lot of what they could have done with Anthem. If they had the lead engineers for Frostbite, they could have done so much more.
Yeah, they could have.
It would have been, we're rebuilding instead of Frankensteining a monster.
Yep, pretty much.
And like, so that's what EA's fault was that mandate, basically.
Saying they had to work on that engine to make the game run properly.
Because they didn't even let them bring in the modified stuff they had from Dragon Age Inquisition. Because at least that already had like an inventory system and stuff baked in.
Yeah.
They made them start from scratch, which was a bad idea. But beyond that, not a lot of it was EA's fault.
Yep. It was just them taking their time, and then the game, or the producer of the game, came in and just basically sat everyone down and made a game.
Like, it just astonishes me to think that the executive producer walks in, realizes nothing is done.
In the last 2 years, mind you.
16 to 18 months.
Yep.
They make that, which, as I said earlier, is honestly impressive.
That they could make a game in a year and a half, 2 years.
That was like that. If they would have marketed that as this has been 18 months of work basically on the actual game, I think the world might have actually been like, wow, this is impressive.
Yeah.
But they didn't.
We didn't know until Jason Schreier came in and said, yeah, they worked on this for 18 months, and this is what you got.
And the great thing is, if you actually watch the Anthem credits, that executive producer's name is so high up because of that stunt.
Yep.
Because he had to come in and try and fix everything.
Yep. I'm kind of surprised still that the game developer left his name in a little bit, just because of the fact that the game doesn't run.
And then there's there's a lot to be said. BioWare, I think, right now has to learn really fast that old BioWare doesn't exist anymore.
Yeah.
That what we had from BioWare Edmonton back with Dragon Age 1, 2, and Origins, and Mass Effect 1, 2, and I'll say 3, because
maybe
that trilogy, even though it ended poorly, people still liked it.
3 was still a good game. It was just everyone was outraged because of the ending, because it was press a button and go here.
I have a better one, which is what Bernie from Rooster Teeth, his son, said. Pick your favorite color. That color destroyed the universe in a different way.
You pretty much.
That's basically how it goes. But anyways, so they don't have that same BioWare anymore that wrote those stories, that made those games. A lot of those people moved on or retired or just did something else. And now they're working with a bunch of new people who aren't accustomed to the way BioWare is used to handling stuff. Because BioWare actually does a lot of crunch. And look at last November when Red Dead 2 came out.
Yeah.
Rockstar got a lot of flack after the crunch time stuff.
That's fair.
Because as much as crunch is a necessity, it is really bad. Because that's... people are working like 20-hour work days to try and get stuff done.
Also, a big thing that Jason went into with the BioWare's debacle with it was people were using their coffee breaks to go and
cry in a closet.
Yep.
There were crying closets, or there were people who would take like 3-month vacations and never come back. There was a lot of stuff where it was just like...
it wasn't a good place to be working, and they need to fix it, which is a big problem with BioWare now.
And I feel like we should talk about why that was happening. Because that wasn't happening just out of the blue because BioWare.
Yeah.
BioWare is normally like that. The reason this was happening is because decisions on what was going to be in the game were being held for up to a year.
Yeah.
You would be working on a feature of the game that you were like, you and your team were making for upwards to a year. It could be anywhere from like a couple weeks to a year. And all of a sudden, in the next meeting, they look at you, what are you guys working on right now? Oh, this feature. Oh, no one told you, we're scrapping that. Get rid of it and start work on this now.
Yeah.
That's not healthy. That's going to hurt, like, break people.
It's you working on something for so long and someone saying, oh, we're not doing that, or this is actually wrong, we didn't want this, we wanted this.
It's the equivalent to, like, watching the Sistine Chapel be done, and just going up and being like, hey, watch this, and just splashing a bucket of paint all over it.
Yeah.
It's just like, what have you done? You just threw it all away.
Yep.
And it's just, so that is why people were having those times where they had to do that. It sucks that it had to happen, but like, when that's happening in your workplace, you're gonna do that eventually. Like, you're gonna break.
Yeah, it's gonna break someone, and you're either just gonna leave or
break down in another way.
Yep.
And it sucks because, like, that was these people's livelihoods too. Like, that's what they were doing for a job. They were getting paid for this. And while some people would be like, whatever, they still got paid. Yeah, they did. But all that stuff that they worked on is now gone.
Yeah.
They won't ever get to see it again either. Because that's the company's property, not theirs.
Yeah.
So it's not like they even have a copy to be like, oh yeah, we did all this. No, it's gone.
It's gone, and no one's ever gonna see that work.
And that's just part of the mess. Then you have BioWare Edmonton's Pride. There's a reason Pride is one of the 7 deadly sins.
Yep.
It leads to horrible things, such as when you watch BioWare Montreal after the failure that was Andromeda. Even though the game itself was fine, it was just a lot of
bugs and facial nightmares.
Yeah. They got the studio got dissolved, assets were moved, and a lot of people either lost their jobs or got relocated. Whatever. You would think after watching that you'd realize, okay, we have to be more careful. No.
Nah.
BioWare Edmonton does not take the advice from BioWare Austin.
Yep. And saying that it's the same, you're going through the same problem we went through with Knights of the Old Republic. Stop it. Change this. You're gonna have the same problem.
We know how to fix this. Please listen. We dealt with this.
Yeah.
And then, no, we're BioWare Edmonton. We're not you guys.
We're the top one. We're number one of BioWare. Pretty much is what was going on in their heads.
Because they hadn't been contested for so long. Like, I can't get over it. I can't that they didn't know until 2017 what they were making.
when we were showing the game.
But now that they know what they're making, they can compare to the likes of. They'll have the best one to compare to actually. Borderlands 3.
Oh yeah.
Because if anyone can do looter shooter, it's Gearbox.
Yeah.
But like, how did they do this?
Yeah.
How did EA not look into this more? Like, you made a 7-year investment. You gave these people money to keep development going for 7 years, basically, because that's what happens when you get a publisher deal.
Yep.
They give you money to pay your employees and your bills to keep the company alive until you finish the product, and then you make that money back. That is exactly what a publishing deal is.
Yeah.
And so they made a 7-year deal. You would think in your 7-year deal, you'd probably give a little more care to be like, we should check up on them more.
Yeah.
That's a long deal.
Activision was on Bungie's neck half the time.
And was that good for them? Probably not.
Probably not the best. It started adding microtransactions into the game eventually.
That was less of an Activision thing and more of a Bungie thing. Because what that was is, the way a publishing deal ends up working is the publisher takes a huge cut of your sales profit.
Yeah.
So, in between, like, DLC releases, basically, they need something to pay the bills and their employees.
Yeah.
So they add microtransactions because EA and Activision wouldn't be taking as much of a cut off those, and those will go directly to paying for their services.
Yeah.
Which, it's still scummy, but I understand it.
Yep.
Because we aren't living in the day and age anymore where you release a game and that's it.
Yep, you have to keep releasing so that you can...
Stay relevant.
Yep. Because if you don't release a game for a while, you get forgotten, and maybe if you make a new one, old fans will like it.
It's just like... I don't understand how they went from, like... I know a lot of it was, like, the community around it, but I don't understand how they went from not knowing the game they were making to everyone declaring them a Destiny killer.
Yeah.
Although that term gets thrown around every other year.
Yeah, because you keep getting MMO shooters, which are touted as Destiny killers. The first one was Division. Division flopped pretty quickly.
They fixed it, but it's still not doing great. Division 2 is better, but it's just... It has the same thing that Warframe has, where they're different enough to where they can't really kill the other.
Yeah.
Because, as we talked about earlier, the two of us, at least I do, I gathered it from you, prefer the first person.
Yeah.
And if you want that, you're going to play Destiny.
You're going to play a first person, not a third person.
Whereas Warframe, Division, and Anthem are all third person.
Yeah.
The two first person looter shooters that come to the top of my head, Destiny and Borderlands.
Yeah.
The only thing is Borderlands isn't as multiplayer.
You only have up to 4 players at a time.
Anthem, they didn't learn the thing that helped Bungie so much, which was 1 week, a singular week, was it? And then VOG dropped. Was it? Yeah, it was like after the first week.
2 weeks.
2 weeks.
Because they gave you the first week to get ready for you to beat the story, and then the second week was you have a week to get the most powerful gear to go take on this raid.
To take on the new raid that had been teased a decent amount, Vault of Glass.
Yep.
And Anthem doesn't have anything like that.
There's no...
They aren't getting new raid or dungeon things until like
Act 3, which is April or somewhere in there. Yeah.
Until this month, and that's an issue. Because, as we said earlier, it came out in February. That means, and it was like early February. Wasn't it?
Yeah. Mid.
Mid.
Because it was like, yeah, it was February 12th or 16th
I
or
knew it
something
had
like
2
that.
in it. So that means you're going 2 months without like new content.
Yeah.
no new content,
Meet the Destiny 1 problem. We went several months without it and people dropped. By the time this new act comes out, half the player base is probably left.
It's depressing. Have you looked at the Anthem subreddit in the last couple weeks? It's just a lot of people now. Even the hardcore streamers just make like Reddit threads that are like, "Stop coming here. There's nothing here, and when we finally get something, there might be, but right now we have nothing."
Yeah.
And it's depressing because I like competition. Competition is how games get better.
It's how they improve and get better.
Because it's fair to say there's a good reason Destiny 1 was a problem.
There was nothing else like it.
No, not just that. Warframe did exist, kind of.
Kind of, but it kind of got better after. It was the following year where Warframe kind of blew up.
The reason Destiny didn't have like as much as it needed at launch, as much as I love Bungie, they have an ego. Yeah. Until like last year, that ego was still around. Because like it hurt in year one of Destiny 1, they got hurt. They saw like what the community could really do to them by not like being like, what happened? Then they made Taken King.
That fixed most of the game.
And was a giant ego boost. Because it fixed the game, like you said.
It fixed most of the problems, which were things weren't going on for long periods of time.
They gave us a bunch of exotic quests. They gave us stuff to chase. They gave us a raid that was arguably really fun. There was just so much to do. They gave us Court of Oryx, just a thing that you could grind for as long as you want. And they got a big head really quickly.
Again, yeah.
And then Rise of Iron didn't really improve on anything.
Well, Rise of Iron, the problem with that was because of the fact that they didn't even know they were making it. Because that was the year Destiny 2 was supposed to release. Problems happened. And they couldn't release it.
I'm fine with it though. Because it was average.
Yeah.
It wasn't great, it wasn't bad. All in all, it brought some fun stuff.
Yeah.
Then you have Destiny 2. Which
people liked the first week of.
You had fun for the first week and then you had everything.
Yeah, pretty much.
And that's an issue.
My big thing about Destiny 2 was I was living in Brandon here. I played it on my Xbox, which wasn't with me. I would go home for a weekend. I had like half the stuff already.
And like, it just, they got their big head again.
Yep.
And they had that until about Warmind, which was what, February? Was that the February?
March.
Warmind, which was the second expansion, like the small ones, it came out in March. And that's when they kind of realized, we don't know what to do. We don't know what people want right now.
Yeah.
And honestly, I didn't expect much to come out of that summit they did. But honestly, with the way Forsaken turned out, they're good. But I think that's taught them now that they can't do everything on their own.
Yeah.
And that they need to actually listen. Which is what EA and what BioWare needs to do.
Yeah.
Because
one game helped BioWare, and a month later another one. Well, one didn't help BioWare, it helped EA, and the other one went and put their reputation back to where it was. Because you had Apex come out, people loved that game. Mostly because it's free.
Yeah.
But that's another thing.
Oversaturation of free games, whatever. And then Anthem, it tanked.
Yeah.
People loved it, like, for the first week. Like Destiny 2.
Yep.
And then people realized, this isn't fun. Why am I doing what I'm doing?
Yep.
When you're mindlessly grinding for something you don't understand, what do?
Yeah.
And they've had to come, like, I hope they can find a way to fix the game.
Hopefully.
It's just like, I can't believe that this happened. There's so much they could have done, and they didn't.
They could have fixed stuff and tried to make a game.
And I think they've handed off a lot of it to Austin now.
Yeah.
So, let's hope Austin can find a way to do stuff, and because I want competition.
Yeah.
I want the game to do all right. So, we'll see what happens.
Yep.
Anyways, I think we're about time.
Yep. Thank
So-
you for listening, I guess.
Yeah? Thanks for joining me, David.
Yep. Thanks for coming on today.
Peace.
See ya.